All right, so are you ready to dive into some pretty unexpected territory with me today?
Always up for an adventure. Lay it on me.
Okay, cool. So today we're looking at this blog post. It's called 50 Submissive Journal Prompts, and it's from a website called Listallium.
Interesting. I'm intrigued already.
Right. I know the title might sound a little niche, maybe even a bit intimidating, but trust me, these prompts, they go way deeper than you might think. We're talking about vulnerability, communication, like even setting boundaries. It's deep stuff.
Yeah, I've got to say the concept of submission as a framework for self-discovery, that's pretty fascinating.
Right. And, from what I've seen, Listallian seems to be all about journaling, like as a tool for self-reflection and personal growth.
Hmm.
And these prompts, they're just like they're using this unique lens of submission to get those wheels turning.
Yeah, totally. And I think what's really cool is that it's less about any specific lifestyle or anything and way more about creating space for some serious introspection.
Totally. So the blog post, it breaks these prompts down into 5 categories. We've got exploring vulnerability, strengthening communication. Oh, and there's celebrating your role, navigating challenges, and setting intentions and growth. 10 prompts for each, and some of them, well, let's just say, they really made me stop and think.
I bet. It's really interesting how they've managed to take this, seemingly niche concept and use it to explore these like really universal human
Right.
experiences.
It's pretty clever.
Yeah.
Like, take this one, for example. This is from the Exploring Vulnerability section. Reflect on what vulnerability means to you within the context of submission. How does it strengthen your relationships?
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. It really challenges you to rethink vulnerability, right? Like,
Yeah.
we often associate it with weakness, but this prompt flips that script completely.
Totally. It's like, how can opening yourself up, even when you're not in control, actually lead to stronger connections? Because that's something that applies to any relationship, right? Whether it's with a partner, a friend, or even just with yourself. Absolutely. It's about recognizing that true intimacy in any form requires that courage to be seen, flaws and all. And what's really cool here is that Listallian really stresses this idea of emotional safety.
Yeah.
They're not talking about blind obedience or anything like that.
Oh, thank goodness. So we're not talking about being a doormat. Got it.
Exactly. It's more about this idea of finding empowerment through like a conscious surrender. A very different concept.
Okay, I'm starting to see the nuance here. But I'm still kind of curious about how this submission angle plays out, practically in the prompts. Can you give me another example?
Sure. Let's look at one from the strengthening communication section. It asks, write about a time when you found it difficult to communicate your feelings. What could have made it easier? Pretty straightforward, right? We've all been there.
Yeah, totally. Bottling things up,
Yeah.
avoiding tough conversations, the whole deal.
Exactly. But when you look at it through this lens of submission, clear communication, it becomes even more crucial, because you're not just expressing your needs, you're actively shaping the dynamic, setting boundaries, advocating for yourself.
It's like, whoa, it's a masterclass in assertive communication disguised as a journal prompt. Sneaky, but brilliant.
Right. It's like they're using this unexpected angle to teach you these really valuable life skills that you can apply anywhere.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. But before we get too deep into the positive stuff, let's talk about the navigating challenges section. This is where things get real, right?
Oh, absolutely. This category, it's all about dealing with those inevitable bumps in the road. And this one it really got me thinking. Reflect on the importance of balancing self-care and service. How do you nurture yourself in your role?
Yeah, that's huge. It's so easy to get caught up in taking care of everyone else, family, friends, work, that we completely forget about ourselves.
Right, it's classic burnout territory. But what I find fascinating here is how Listallian connects this back to the concept of submission. They make this really compelling argument that by truly understanding your own needs and setting those healthy boundaries, you're actually better equipped to serve others in the long run.
So it's not about self-sacrifice. It's almost like strategic self-preservation,
Right.
so you can show up as your best self no matter what role you're playing.
Exactly. It's like they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. And this prompt, it forces you to stop and think about how you refill your cup even when life gets crazy.
Okay, I'm seeing how this all connects. Now, last but not least, we have setting intentions and growth. These prompts, they seem to be about, like, looking ahead and consciously creating the future you want. Very powerful stuff.
Yeah, and there's this one that really grabbed my attention. Write about a new skill or practice you'd like to explore. How will it enhance your dynamic? Now, on the surface, you might think this has nothing to do with submission.
Yeah, I can see that, but if you dig a little deeper,
Right. When you push yourself to grow, you're essentially choosing to submit to the process of learning, of expanding your horizons.
Whoa, that's deep. It's like saying, okay, I'm willing to be a student in this area of my life so I can become a more well-rounded person. And that's a mindset that applies to literally everything. Relationships, career goals, personal development, you name it.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of your growth and recognizing that even in situations where you might not feel totally in control, you still have the power to choose how you respond and how you evolve.
Wow, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Mm.
And I'm really starting to see why these prompts are so much more than just a niche exercise. They're like these little windows into these really big questions about how we relate to ourselves and to the world around us.
It's so true. And honestly, we've only scratched the surface. There's like a whole universe of wisdom packed into these 50 prompts. I'm already itching to grab my journal and start exploring some of these ideas myself.
Me too.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away, let's take a moment to just, like, absorb everything we've talked about so far. When we come back, we'll dive even deeper and see what other gems we can unearth from this totally unexpected source. All right, so we're back and ready for more of these journal prompts. I'm really starting to see these prompts in a whole new light.
Yeah, it's amazing how much depth they managed to pack into a seemingly simple format.
It really is. Okay, so this one from the Exploring Vulnerability section really jumped out at me. It says, write about your biggest fear in submission. How can you work toward overcoming it with trust and courage? Like, whoa, we are getting deep here.
Right, we're talking about some serious psychological territory now. It's tapping into something so fundamental to the human experience, confronting fear. But what I love is how this prompt, it reframes fear not as something to avoid, but as this potential catalyst for growth.
Yeah, like, okay, you're scared. Now what are you going to do about it? And it ties that right into building trust and courage. I mean, those are essential ingredients for any healthy relationship, right? Romantic, professional, even just the relationship you have with yourself.
Absolutely. And I think what's really insightful here is how Listallium emphasizes the importance of self-awareness in this whole process. They talk about like identifying your triggers, understanding your limits, and communicating them clearly. It's not about suppressing your fear. It's about developing healthy ways to cope and building resilience.
So it's not just about journaling your feelings. It's about using that journaling to actually create positive change in your life, right?
Exactly. It's about moving from self-reflection to self-action. And speaking of action, there's this great prompt in the strengthening communication section that I wanted to touch on. It says, reflect on how you can use journaling to clarify your thoughts before having a difficult conversation. This is a technique that therapists and communication experts use all the time.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this. It's like a mental rehearsal, right? Where you write out what you want to say, kind of anticipate how the other person might respond, and basically work through the whole scenario on paper before you actually have the conversation.
Exactly. And what makes it so helpful is that it gives you that space to process your emotions, get clear on your intentions before you're actually in the heat of the moment. It's like having a script, but not in a manipulative way, more like to ensure you're communicating authentically from a place of clarity.
That makes so much sense. And I love how they connect this back to the idea of submission. It's like, even when you're not the one in the dominant role, you can still have agency and influence the dynamic through communication that is clear and thoughtful.
Exactly. Recognizing that power dynamics exist in every relationship and communication, well, it's the key to navigating them effectively.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about gratitude. There's this prompt in the Celebrating Your Roles section that asks, how do you express gratitude and appreciation for your partner's role? How does it strengthen your connection? Seems pretty straightforward, but I think there's a lot more to unpack here.
Oh, for sure. On the surface, it's about expressing appreciation, which we know is important in any relationship. But when you look at it through the lens of submission, it takes on a whole new meaning. It becomes about recognizing and acknowledging the value that the other person brings to the dynamic.
So it's about seeing their strengths, their contributions, even the things that might challenge you, and choosing to appreciate those things.
Exactly. It's a powerful shift in perspective. It moves you from this place of expectation or entitlement to a place of genuine appreciation and respect.
And that, in turn, strengthens the bond between you.
Precisely. It fosters this sense of mutual appreciation and interdependence, which is so essential for a healthy relationship.
Okay, time to get real for a second and talk about boundaries. We all know how important they are, but actually setting them and sticking to them, well, that can be tough.
Yeah.
And there's this prompt in the Navigating Challenges section that addresses this head on. Write about a boundary that was tested. How did you reaffirm your limits and maintain trust?
This one is gold. It really encourages you to take a look at your own experiences with boundary setting. Like, did you communicate your boundaries clearly? Did you stand your ground? Was there compromise involved?
It's like a post-game analysis for your boundaries.
Totally. And what I find really interesting is how Listallium connects this to trust. They argue that setting boundaries, it's actually a way of building trust because it shows the other person that you're reliable and consistent.
It's like saying, these are my limits. You can trust me to hold them.
Exactly. And that consistency, well, it creates this sense of safety and predictability in the relationship, which is crucial for intimacy to grow.
Okay, before we move on to that last category, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier. Self-care. This is a theme that keeps popping up, but it's really explicitly addressed in the Navigating Challenges section, right?
For sure. And this one prompt just sums it up so perfectly. Reflect on the importance of balancing self-care and service. How do you nurture yourself in your role?
Okay, let's break this down a little. How does this whole idea of balancing self-care and service connect back to this bigger theme of submission?
That's a great question. I think what Listallium is getting at is that true submission, like the healthy kind. It's not about neglecting yourself. It's about recognizing that, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to prioritize your own well-being so you can truly show up for the other person.
Yeah, it's like saying taking care of myself isn't selfish, it's strategic.
Exactly. And I think that's such a powerful message, especially in a context where submission might be, I don't know, associated with self-sacrifice. It's about recognizing you have needs too. And meeting those needs, well, it actually makes you better equipped to serve others. It's not about martyrdom. It's about being a mindful and responsible participant in the dynamic.
I love that. And, this whole conversation about self-care, it reminds me of something else Listallium emphasizes throughout the blog post.
Yeah.
The importance of communication. It's like the foundation for everything.
Right. They keep coming back to it again and again. And it's not just about communicating your own needs. It's about actively listening to the other person, being open to feedback.
So it's about creating this dialogue, this back and forth, where everyone feels heard and respected. And that's a really beautiful way to approach any relationship, right? Romantic, platonic, professional.
Absolutely. It's like recognizing that every relationship is this dance, this delicate balance of give and take, and communication is the music that guides the steps. I love that metaphor.
Okay, I'm with you. But let's move on to that final category, setting intentions and growth. This is where things get really interesting because it's about using what you've learned to actually create the future that you want.
Yeah. These prompts are all about conscious creation, like using the power of intention to shape your reality. And this one really caught my eye. Reflect on how submission inspires you to pursue personal growth and self-improvement. Now, that might sound a little counterintuitive at first.
I was just thinking that. How does submission lead to growth? It seems like a contradiction.
Right. But if you think about it, anytime you consciously step into a role, even one that seems unconventional, you're opening yourself up to these new experiences, new perspectives.
It's like saying, I'm willing to surrender to this process, to learn from it, and let it transform me.
Exactly. And that willingness to surrender, to let go of control and embrace the unknown, it can be incredibly empowering.
So it's about recognizing that true growth often happens outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And that sometimes those are the greatest lessons.
And sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the experiences we might initially resist.
Okay, I see how it all ties together. But how can someone actually use these prompts to, create positive change in their life?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I think the key is approaching them with a spirit of curiosity and self-compassion. Don't be afraid to really dig deep, to challenge those assumptions and explore maybe some uncomfortable truths that might be lurking beneath the surface.
It's about using journaling as a tool for self-discovery, not self-judgment.
Exactly. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's your personal journey. And those insights you gain, they'll be unique to you.
Okay, I love that. It's about embracing the individuality of the process.
And it's about trusting that the answers you seek, they're already within you, just waiting to be discovered.
All right, I am feeling inspired. But before we wrap things up, I want to mention one more prompt that really resonated with me. It's from Setting Intentions and Growth, and it asks, reflect on how journaling helps you stay aligned with your intentions and values as a submissive. Now, this one, it might seem a little specific, but I think there's a universal message there.
Totally. It's about using journaling as a tool for accountability, for checking in with yourself and asking, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I making choices that support my goals?
It's like having a personal compass that guides you back to true north, right?
Right.
Whenever you start to stray off course.
Exactly. And that's something we can all benefit from, regardless of our roles or relationships.
Okay, I think we've officially come full circle here. We started this deep dive a little skeptical, but I'm walking away with a new appreciation for these prompts and for the unexpected wisdom they offer.
Me too. It's incredible how much we can learn from the most unexpected sources. It's a good reminder to stay curious, to challenge our assumptions, and just be open to new perspectives.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a message I can definitely get behind. So to our listeners, I encourage you to embrace the unexpected. Challenge your assumptions and never stop exploring that inner world of yours. You never know what you might find.
And remember, the most valuable knowledge is the knowledge we put into practice. So take these insights, these reflections, and use them to create a life that is authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
All right, so we're back, and I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into these submissive journal prompts. And you know what? When we first started talking about this, I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical. But I gotta say, I am blown away by how much depth and wisdom we found here.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. It's like a testament to the power of journaling. Even prompts designed for a very specific niche can spark some really universal insights. For sure. Okay, so let's jump back in with a prompt that really got me thinking. It's from the Celebrating Your Role section, and it says, reflect on how submission has helped you grow as a person. What lessons have you learned? Now, this might seem a little counterintuitive, but I think it's such a brilliant way to reframe this whole concept of submission.
It really does challenge that typical assumption, right? That
Yeah.
submission is passive or disempowering. Instead, it asks you to think about how, consciously and deliberately choosing to surrender can actually lead to personal growth.
It's like saying, okay, I'm not in control here, but what can I learn from this? How can I use this to become stronger, wiser, more resilient?
Exactly. And what I find really interesting is that Listallium connects this to humility. They say that by letting go of control, you actually open yourself up to new perspectives, new experiences that you might have missed otherwise.
It's like acknowledging that you don't have all the answers. And sometimes the greatest lessons come from letting go of the ego and embracing the unknown.
So true. And that's a powerful lesson no matter where you apply it in life. Relationships, work, personal growth, you name it.
Totally.
Okay.
Okay, here's another one that caught my eye. It's from the Navigating Challenges section. It's a good one. It says, reflect on a time when your expectations didn't align with reality. How did you find understanding in that moment? We've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Life rarely goes exactly according to plan. And those moments of dissonance, they can be really tough to deal with.
Especially when you're someone who likes to be in control. I know I've struggled with that in the past.
Yeah, that's a really common struggle. And this prompt, it encourages you to approach those moments of disappointment, not with judgment, but with curiosity.
So it's about asking, what can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
How can I use this experience to become more adaptable, more resilient?
Exactly, to become more accepting of the things that you just can't control. And Listallium has this really interesting perspective on this. They say that by surrendering to the present moment, even when it's not what you expected, you open yourself up to new possibilities, new solutions that you might not have seen before.
Oh, it's like when one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah, exactly. But we often get so focused on that closed door that we miss the open one that's right there in front of us.
Okay, one last prompt before we wrap things up. This one is from Setting Intentions and Growth, and it's a bit of a head-scratcher. It says, reflect on how journaling helps you stay aligned with your intentions and values as a submissive.
This prompt, I think it really highlights the power of journaling as a tool for self-awareness and accountability. It's about using the written word to clarify your values, set your intentions, track your progress.
Like having a personal coach in your back pocket.
Right. And what I find interesting is how Listallium connects this back to surrender. They argue that by surrendering to that process of journaling, by being really honest and vulnerable on the page, you gain a much deeper understanding of yourself and your motivations.
So it's about using journaling to strip away all the masks, all the pretenses, and really get to the core of who you are.
Exactly. And that level of self-awareness, well, it's essential for living a life that is truly aligned with your values and intentions.
All right, so I think we've come full circle here. We started this deep dive a bit skeptical, but honestly, I'm walking away with this whole new appreciation for these prompts and for the unexpected wisdom they offer.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I think it's such a beautiful reminder that growth can happen anywhere, anytime, as long as we're open to it.
I love that, and that's definitely a message I can get behind. So to our listeners, I encourage you, embrace the unexpected, challenge your assumptions, and don't ever stop exploring that amazing inner world of yours. You just never know what gems you might find.
And don't forget, the most valuable knowledge is the knowledge that we actually put into practice. So take these insights, these reflections, and use them to create a life that is truly authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling.
That's a perfect way to end our deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep.